So Rashag said, does he answer you? So he said, yes. So then he said, you're a Rebbe. That's the story, whether that happened. I wasn't there. But he was completely bottled to the Rebbe at the end. There's no doubt about that. Okay. We just learned about our wedding plans. And Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak dancing at the wedding, and then a pillar of fire separating between him and the rest of the people at his levaya. And Rav Zera, who at first was upset with the behavior of Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak at the chasnas, came to realize that no, it was in the schus of his shtus, of his shoit, which is his hadassim, or his shita, but whichever of those three different ways of understanding the word shtus, it was in that merit that he had this tremendous fire. And dafka at a wedding, ish v'isha, eish yud k, right? Each word has an aleph and a shin. The ish has a yud, isha has a k. So when they work together in harmony, so it's eish yud k, the fire of the Eibishter. And there was a gilui begilui mamish. Okay, so we're 7 lines up from the bottom. Well, bir inyan. The explanation of this is as follows: Dehine orein seif harileis machshava tfisa bechla. The highest levels of godly reality are not comprehended in thought at all. What does that mean? It doesn't mean we're not smart enough. It means ulamayla migeter hasoga. It's beyond the whole notion of comprehension. Right? We've talked about this many times, but it's important because we live in a world that worships intellect, and intellect is very, very powerful. There's no question about that, and it's very sophisticated. But intellect is limited. Intellect can only do what intellect can do. There's all sorts of things that intellect can't do. Right? Intellect can't feel. Right? And there's all sorts of things that intellect can't understand. So intellect can understand feelings only to the extent that I've had the feeling, and so intellect can then think about it. But if I've never had that feeling, intellect can't understand what that feeling is. Meaning someone who's never experienced love, so intellect can't understand what love is. Right? Because it's not an idea. Intellect is good at ideas. The mashal that's brought very, very often is, someone born blind, can you explain to them the color orange? Of course not. It's not an idea. It's a visual experience. If you haven't had that visual experience, so then they can't understand orange. Once we've had an experience, so then of course we sort of process it in our brain. We process that experience in our intellect. Okay, that's true. But we never, it depends on the experience, right? But we'll never really get to what it mamish is. People have been writing poems about love for a very long time. And has anybody mamish, got it right? Well, okay, it might be more or less, you might read one and say, oh, that expresses my experience in the most powerful way. Okay, say that's good. Someone else might say, no, that's not that, that's something else. Whereas 2 + 2 is 4, and you can't argue about that. It just is, right? Because intellect is objective reality, and there's other states of reality. So there's levels of godly reality that can't be understood through intellect, not because we're not smart enough, it's because those aspects of godliness are beyond intellect. They don't fit into the box called intellect. The kol hasoga, any level of comprehension, in a gamma yosir nailis, even the highest level of comprehension, it's still within the definition of something called comprehension, intellectual understanding. Right? So it's limited to that extent. Now, I don't want you to think this is a blasphemous statement. We've probably made it before, but even the chokhmah of the Eibishter is limited to the extent that it is chokhmah and not something else, so to speak. Right? In other words, there will be aspects of God's reality that his chokhmah doesn't understand. Why not? Because it's l'mayla min chokhmah. Because there's aspects of godliness that are beyond chokhmah. Also his. Why? Because Chachma is Chachma. It is what it is. It isn't what it isn't. Okay. So now, obviously, relative to anything that is Shayach to Chachma, so then the Chachma of the Eibishter is infinite and therefore encompasses all of those ideas. But anything that doesn't fit into that box, so is that relevant to Chachma Savayim? That's why the Eibishter can't explain to you, so to speak, rationally why he had a taiva for a dir b'tachton. It's coming from a deeper place in him, just like there's deeper places in you. There's places in you that are beyond Chachma. Right? Okay, so to the Eibishter. The reason we're the way we are is because he's the way he is. Right? Now, much of what we might not be able to explain would be considered lamatam, below subconscious. Okay, but there's also superconscious reality that we can't explain rationally. Okay, so even intellect understands that there's things beyond intellect. Aval ma she'einu b'geder hasaga, but that which isn't within the defined reality of comprehension, something that can be comprehended with intellect. Just like there's things that can be grasped with your hands, but you wouldn't say that I grasp that idea with my hand. You can't grasp an idea with your hand. You can grasp a bowl, you can grasp a table and a cup, but you can't grasp an idea. Fine? So you can't, there's certain things you can't grasp in intellect either. So then those things can't be comprehended at all. Yutfas, grasped. Right? As is explained in the 18th chapter of Tanya, which we finished recently, relative to Kadosh Baruch Hu, is beyond intellect, vadas, and understand and knowledge, and there is no thought that can comprehend him, meaning there are aspects of godly reality that thought can comprehend. Why? Well, because the Eibishter allows himself to be put in that form, and so you and I can discuss him. So all sorts of different levels of godly light can be, we can learn about them and understand where they fit and what they do, etc., etc. Okay, fine. What they are, what does that look like? What does infinite godly light look like? What am I supposed to know? The only thing that my intellect truly understands is finite reality. It understands the existence of infinite reality. It can appreciate the existence of it, but doesn't know what it is. I don't know what infinite is. Never experienced infinite. We don't experience infinite. We experience finite. So any time we try to grasp infinity, we'll frame it in finite reality. Sort of turn it into something that we could see in finitude. Is that what it is? No. So we'll use a mushal called light to express godliness. Okay. Why? Well, because we experience light. The light we experience it exists in finite reality, but it's it is an interesting thing, light, right? It doesn't seem to be as limited as everything else, and that's why we use it as a mushal for the Eibishter. But Lamaisa, the light we're experiencing in this room is nitfas in the space in this room, and that's where it is. It's nowhere else. There's different light out there. It might be coming from the same sun. So in that sense, it's the same. In this case, it's not. It's coming from these little light bulbs up there. Or big light bulbs, whatever they are. So thought can't comprehend God. There are again, just to be sure that we understand this, because it is important, and it's discussed at greater length in other places. Mamale, that's a level of reality that human intellect can understand. Just like your neshama fills your guf, so God fills the world. I don't have any problem with mamale. Right? The person doesn't, I can't see it. So it's true that it's dependent on my emunah that there is such a thing. Okay, say it. But it also makes perfect sense that there's some energizing force that's giving everything its existence, right? Okay, that's an idea that human intellect can deal with very, very simply. not have issues with it. Okay. Sevev, relative to Sevev, what do we say? That we have what's called Hasaga Shlilis, negative Hasaga. Now, I know what it isn't. What do we say? How do we define Sevev? Can't be clothed in a kli. Okay, I'll tell you what it can't do. I won't tell you what it does. I'll tell you what it doesn't do. Right? It's infinite. Okay, not finite. I don't know. No, but tell me what it is. Well, I can't tell you what it is. I can just tell you what it isn't. It's not finite. Right? Okay, fine. That's Sev. So Sevev we can have, and that's why we talk about all different levels of Sevev. Hasaga Shlilis. That's why when the Rebbe wanted to teach us about Sevev in Ois Aleph, what did he first do? He taught us about Mamalek. Here, let's talk about Mamalek first for 15 lines. Sevev is not that. Right? That's what he did, right? That's exactly what the Rebbe did in this name. Right? In order to understand Sevev, let's first talk about Mamalek. Everything we just said was all about a level of light that's clothed in the worlds and expresses itself differently in the worlds and clothed in Kalim, etc. Sevev is beyond all that. It's in all the worlds equally. That's what the Rebbe said. And then there's a level, Leis Makshavat Hizbei Chalal. I mean, generally we talk about Atzmus in that sense. Can't understand it at all. It doesn't fit into any box. Because it's not finite, it's not infinite, it's beyond both. It doesn't follow any of the rules of reality as you and I know. Even infinite godly light, you and I will say about it that it has a beginning with a hope. Even though this year's Bosi leGani talks about the fact that the highest level of Art Ein Sof doesn't even have a beginning, but okay, we're not going there. Right? That's the Chiddush in this year's Bosi leGani. That has it for, this is what, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, Yud Daled, Tes Vav, Tes Zayin, Yud Zayin. So I have to do that again. Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, Yud Daled, Tes Vav, Tes Zayin. 6 years. For 6 years, the Frierdiker Rebbe talks about a mimer in the Zohar about that our Ein Sof is Lamaila Adein Ketzin, Lamata Adein Tachlis. Above, below. Right? And explains for 6 chapters. The first 4 chapters, the Rebbe talks about it a particular way. Basically saying, no matter how high you go, God's higher. No matter how low you go, God is there. Basically. Right? I mean, to sum it all up in one pithy little line. Right? Okay. This year, complete and total Chiddush. The Rebbe says that's all kepshutai. After breaking your brains for 4 years trying to understand each year's Bosi leGani, they were so hard. So trying to understand those Maimarim. So the Rebbe says this year, well, that was all kipshuta. That was like the simple pshat. Now what is it? Okay, so fine. So the Rebbe says something quite astounding about our Ein Sof. But in general, when we say Leis Makshavat Hizbei Chalal, we're talking about Atzmus. Right now, here the Rebbe says our Ein Sof. Say that in this context, learn that as synonymous with Atzmus. Okay, to make it simpler to understand. Okay. And that's a level that can't be comprehended. Ulagavi Kadosh Baruch Hu shelamayla min haseichel vadas v'leis makshavat hizbei chalal hakol kepesim etzlei yizbarach. Everybody's like a pesi. A pesi is an idiot. What's an idiot? An idiot is someone who doesn't understand. Right. Every single one of us, relative to the Eibishter, is a pesi. Right. What does David HaMelech say? David HaMelech says something really interesting. Kedichsiv ani bear. Bear is like a boor. Right? It's similar. Right? I'm a boor. V'lo yeda. This is David HaMelech talking. And I don't know. Bahamas ha'yisimach. I'm an animal with you. V'ani tamidimach. And I'm always with you. Now, of course, those 3 first statements seem to contradict the last one. The last one seems to contradict the first 3. I'm a boor. I don't know anything. I'm a behema. And I'm always with you. I mean, if I'm such a boor and a behema, how can I possibly always be with you? And that's what David HaMelech says. So I was explaining it. Kloimar. Dafka. Kloimar. Shebezeh not Kloimar is not Dafka, but Dafka. Shebezeh shani bar ba'amis. Because I'm a boor and a behema, ani tamidimach. I'm always with you. Why? In order to reach Atzmus, it's through nullifying our will beyond intellect. If I work on the basis of intellect, I'm not always with God. Why not? Because there's places where God won't fit. There'll be things, to be put it simply, there'll be things I don't understand. Right? Oh, so where's God? Oh my gosh. Right? Well, since the Eibusher is beyond intellect, if I'm working on the level of intellect, there will be times when I'll appreciate the godliness in a particular situation. There'll be times when I can't. Because the level of godliness that's revealed in this situation is beyond Dam V'das, is beyond intellect. Doesn't make sense. There's all sorts of things that happen in life, right? General things and personal things. Don't make sense. Okay, Seder. So that's not the Eibusher. That's as much the Eibusher as those things that do make sense. But if I can't relate to the fact that something doesn't make sense and I can't see the Eibusher unless it makes sense, so then there'll be all sorts of times in reality where I don't see the Eibusher. But if I understand that it's all l'mayla mitam v'das, then he'll be revealed to me in every single situation. Even though I won't necessarily understand the situation, I'll understand it's still him. It's just an aspect of him that's beyond my ability to understand. Sometimes in his great chesed, he allows me to so to speak, as we learned in the Chanukah Maimer, so to speak, I can understand it. Right? Now, even when I understand it, I don't really understand it beseder, but I feel better. Right? It's nice understanding things. Right? Now, usually the things people don't understand are the bad parts, right? But I don't want. I'm saying this. Make sure. I'm just going to say it so God won't hear it. Okay? I don't want him to hear this. Do you understand why you have it so good in life? Can you explain rationally why you have it better than just about anybody who's ever lived on this earth? Do you understand that? Can you explain that rationally, why you deserve a life that's as good as the life you have relative to what most people who've ever lived here have experienced? Jewishly or just in Gashmis? Your Gashmis is better than kings of France in the 15th century, right? I mean, no king of France had Gashmis like you. Right? We even turn off the heat. Tzvi's job is to turn off the heat because they got, there's the heat. Turn off the heat. Right. Okay. We have it so good it's beyond belief. You know why? Can you explain that to me? Shh. Don't let him hear. Baruch Hashem, he wasn't listening while I was saying this because he might say, oh, you want to know? God forbid. Oh, no, I don't want to know. I don't want to have a clue. Right? And even if chos v'sholom, someone is afflicted with some disease in these days, which happens. I mean, the disease is not new in the world. You live in an age where the vast majority of them can be taken care of. Not that it's pleasant. This whole way of dealing with it might not be overly pleasant, right? Sometimes it's, fairly innocuous. But, I mean, if you have an infection, if you have a 3-year-old with an infection, well, you give them antibiotics orally, and in a week they feel better. 100 years ago, they died. How many people didn't have a child die until 100 years ago? How many families didn't bury a child until 100 years ago? Were there such families? Right? Look in the, when you look up people, look in their families. Look up the Rebbeim. How many children they had, how many children live. Right? The biggest catastrophe, and chos v'sholom, not belittling this, the single most difficult thing that anybody would have to deal with in this world is the passing of a child. Okay. That was just normal life until 100 years ago. So how come I got so lucky? Right? I don't know. It's also l'mayla mitam v'das. Usually people only get upset and don't understand when something bad happens. What about all the good? That makes sense to you? You can explain rationally why we've got it so good? I don't know about you. Right? Just shh. Don't say a word. Don't say a word. I mean, say thank you a lot. But other than that, why? Because you might say, "Oh, you really want to know what it could be like?" Right? You could live in Iran. You could live in Iran. Right? You could live in Aleppo, Syria. Why don't you live in Aleppo, Syria? Why did you luck out and you live where you live and you don't live in Aleppo, Syria with all those people, whoever they are? You live in Aleppo, Syria. Right? You could live in Iran. Right? You could live in some disease-ridden part of Africa where woke white people won't let you bring electricity in to free, to keep the medicines that your children need and refrigerated so your children are dying. But there's a bunch of white liberals who don't want you to have that because it'll, cause global warming or something. It's my kid just died because of you. Right? What was it? The Silent Spring, DDT. The lady who wrote the book about DDT, and they ended up banning DDT. How many million children? How many millions? Literally, not an exaggeration. How many millions of children in Africa died because of her book? Because they outlawed DDT and they were dying. Because instead of spraying the fields with DDT and killing all the germs, the kids were catching them and dying. Millions of kids in Africa. Millions since that book in the 50s. It's not like it started, with Barack Obama or something, This has been going on for a while. Right? Silent Spring wrote a book about how there'll be, I never read the book, but evidently the book was about, there won't be anything left because DDT will get into the water and kill everybody and we'll all die. So they stopped spraying DDT on the fields. Okay, so in the West, they figured out something else. In Africa, they didn't have anything else. So kids die. Millions. There's people who wrote papers about this. One person killed all those people. She's considered a hero. Wow. So there's things human intellect just doesn't understand, right? In godliness, in gashmias, there's things we just don't understand. Okay, so you want to touch godliness, so get beyond your intellect. What's that? That's called shtus kedusha. That's where through the shtus, through not living solely by virtue of intellect, a person can touch godliness. Because if I limit myself by intellect, there will be places where I can't find God. Because he's not there. Because there's places that you can't find him with intellect, because he's not in that place where intellect goes. V'lochein, so to speak. I mean, I understand. Leis asar panuim. You know what I mean? This level is called shtus. So David HaMelech says, I'm a shaita, therefore God's always with me. Meaning I can transcend my intellect. I can be mavatal my ratzon. I can get beyond even my ratzon, which itself is beyond intellect. Hine, v'zeo gam kein masha navi. So fascinating. The Rebbe explains what nevuah is about. A navi nikra b'shem meshuga. Right? This is Yehu, when Elisha sent the Bnei Neviim to Yehu. Yehu was the Melech. So what does he say? K'moshe Kosev. It's a pasuk, I don't remember exactly where, but it's probably in Malachim. K'moshe Kosev, Madua ba Meshugas. Why is this Meshuga coming? Who's the Meshuga? Hanavi. Why? Well, Nevuah is beyond intellect, right? Obviously, if you and I could understand everything, we wouldn't need Nevuah. Nevuah allows us access to information that we can't get through intellect, right? The Navi is given a revelation and given certain information. It's not always information. Nevuah doesn't have to be information. It can also just be a revelation of God. But most Nevuahs that we've heard about, the Nevuahs that are written in the book always have information. Right, so what's the information? Well, obviously, it's a piece of information that I wouldn't necessarily come to through intellect, or else what do I need nevuah for? I'll figure it out. Right? And interesting enough, there are aspects of Torah that seem to be, nevuah seems to be unnecessary, but we explain that a lot in terms of why mishpatim have to be understood the same way, or understood. We have to relate to mishpatim the same way we relate to chukim. That really, and this is what we learned in the Chanukah Maimer, that really even the mishpat is l'mayla mina seichel. It's beyond seichel. The Eibishter allows it to also resonate down into human seichel, but its source is beyond human seichel. Okay. So I don't really know why God says don't murder. I know why it makes sense down here. Is that a hand up or are you stretching?
No, hang on.
Okay, yeah.
What's the difference between Seichel and Chachma?
Chachma is one of the three faculties of Seichel. It's the source of Seichel. Chachma, interesting enough, is the part of Seichel that's l'mayla min Seichel. I know that sounds funny, but it's the source. Why can you understand things? Just do, right? You just have this faculty called Chachma. How does it work? I don't know exactly how it works. I just, if you tell me enough times 2 + 2 is 4, I'll figure it out. I'll get that. Tell a dog, he won't get it. He's not going to get it. Right? Okay. So you and I have this thing called Chachma, which, interesting enough, is bittul. That's the place where I'm not yet. It's the source of my consciousness, but it's not my conscious reality yet. Where do I begin? Bina. Understanding. That's why you can conjugate the verb bina and say ani mevin. I understand. You can't say I about Chachma. I what? I mechachem. Lashon Kodesh and Hebrew both are very flexible in terms of taking a 3-letter root and turning it into a verb, right? Mitchakem, machkim, right? There are, you can, but kal form of ani what with Chachma? Ani wizard. What do I do exactly? What am I doing? I'm not, because there's no me there yet. It's the source of me. It's the source. It's the potential of me to appreciate my own existence. Koyach ma. It's the potential of ma.
Oh.
But ani mevin. Bina is me already.
So, where does his pointedness start? Starts in Bina?
Yeah. That's the root of it. Heat, bone, and nut. Right? Yeah. Because if I don't mevin, I have nothing to meet bonein about. Right? If I have an empty head, there's nothing I can contemplate. I'm only going to meditate. I'm going to meditate my own emptiness. Oh. Maybe that's what everybody's doing. Contemplating their own emptiness. Right? So the king says, who sent this Meshuggah? Why? What's Nevuah? Now the Rambam's going to say something fascinating. But the Rebbe is going to quote the Rambam saying something fascinating about Nevuah. Hine, be'esis galus and Nevuah. At the time of the revelation of Nevuah, and what we're going to say applies to everybody but Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? And that means it applies to Yeshaya Navi, right? Yeshaya Navi, pretty serious guy, right? Yeshayahu, right? The 50-something chapters of his book in Tanakh. Yeshayahu, Yechezkel, Yirmiyahu. I'm not talking about the minor prophets. What exactly is a minor prophet? God speaks to you. You're minor? I mean, what does that mean? You have a book in Tanakh. You're called minor? They're not so minor. We don't call them minor. I don't know, someone decided. Minor prophets. Well, a minor prophet. Right? God spoke to them and their book is in the canonized Tanakh. Right? Wow. It's a serious guy. Right? Zechariah. Oh, yeah, there's 10 chapters. These are pretty serious people. Okay. So what happens to all of these Nevi'im? Unbelievably holy people. These are incredibly holy people. Dine Beisis Galus and Nevuah Hayatzarich Lias B'Havshota Sagashmi said they had to throw off their physicality. I mean, they had to go beyond the normal reality of the world in order to be privy to something transcendent, right? To godly wisdom, so beyond ours. Again, if human intellect could understand what it is they're about to hear, so then just figure it out. No. Vahainu, havshotas haseichel v'midas. They have to get rid of their own seichel and their own midas, because they have to be a kli that's open to the godly wisdom. And if my seichel is there, then I'm going to color it with my own intellectual understanding of things. But I don't want my own intellectual understanding of things. I want God's understanding of things. So then I have to move mine aside. Now that's also what every single one of us has to do when we learn Torah B'chlal. But here we're talking about Nevuah, talking in the most obvious way. Nothing that I hear can be colored by me. right? I have to move out of the way. So then I get unadulterated godliness. V'liyos bebechinas bittul. Person has to be in a state of bittul, shelamayla mitam v'das, beyond intellect. Once he comes back, we're going to see what happens to him. Once he comes back to himself, he's then going to have to process it in his intellect and tell it over to you and me. And that's why he has a hard time doing that. Moshe Rabbeinu does that in a way that a 5-year-old can understand, which is astounding. Most Nevi'im say what, they talk in a way that you and I would sort of call poetry as opposed to prose. Moshe Rabbeinu is prose. You read it and you get it. Most Nevuah is poetry. I read it and what's he trying to say exactly? What does he mean? Right? Poetry is harder to understand. Okay, so most Nevuah that you read in Tanakh is more like poetry than prose. It's very hard to understand what he means. Why? Well, he's trying to take a level beyond Tam V'das and bring it down into Tam V'das and explain it to us. So how successful is he at doing that? Well, it depends on how successful he is at seeing it, so to speak. So that's why they say Moshe Rabbeinu, the mashal used in Chazal, is Moshe Rabbeinu saw with the ispaklaria hameira, the clear looking glass. Moshe Rabbeinu saw Elokus clearly, like you and I would see something in this room. And the other Nevi'im saw it ispaklaria she'ena meira, like in a foggy looking glass. They saw it, but what exactly is it? Wasn't so clear. Talking about seeing godly reality, right? So therefore they had a harder time explaining it to you and I. And when a 5-year-old reads Yeshayahu, he hasn't got a clue what's going on. You can show a 5-year-old the Chumash. Obviously, there's a depth to that he doesn't get, but the basic story he can tell you. He comes home, he's standing on the chair at the Shabbos table telling over the story of what happened this week's Parsha, right? Tell the 5-year-old, okay, I'd like you to say over a little Yeshayahu Navi at the table. Stand on the chair and tell over some Yeshayahu. He can't do that. Explain the Haftarah. Right? A lot harder, right? You're learning the Haftarah. What's going on exactly? What is this all about? What's right? Haftarah is harder than the Parsha, no? Right? There's now the good book on Haftarahs. Moshe wrote a book on Haftarahs also. Fourth line. This is also Hafshatas Levushim based in Nevuah. What did the Nevi'im used to do? They would take off their clothes when they had Nevuah. They'd take off their clothes and they would writhe on the ground like someone having what you might describe as an epileptic fit. Why? Because what did they lose? Self. Why? No clothes, on the ground, shaking. Not Moshe Rabbeinu. Everybody else. Like it says by Shaul. V'yafshed gam hu es begadav. He also took off his clothes. V'yiznaber, and he prophesied. Why? Why you have to take off your clothes? Well, where did clothes come from? Simple pshat. Where did clothes come from? Yeah, Beseder. Okay, but where did they come from? Adam and Chava, right? What did they not have until after the Chet? Clothes. Why? No sense of self. Then all of a sudden, what does it say? They noticed that they were naked, they got embarrassed, and they covered themselves up. Where'd that come from? A sense of self. So what does the Navi have to get rid of? The sense of self. What's the expression of that? Lavush, his garments, throws them off. So he throws off his spiritual garments, Seichel and Midas, he throws off his physical garments. Can you imagine Yeshayahu Navi naked on the floor, writhing? I mean, it's like such a bizarre image, right? Because in the Yeshayahu Navi, if he walked in this room, we'd all fall flat on our face from his holiness, right? He'd be the holiest person you ever saw, right? Okay. Absolutely wild.
Wasn't it said that the Alter Rebbe, he had to lock his room because he'd like roll over the place?
Well, the Alter Rebbe also was something that evidently wasn't once. That he would roll around, right? When he davened, he would roll around. Okay. The levushim heim by mitzad chet eitzadas. Levushim come from the chet eitzadas, the sin of the tree of knowledge. The kedem chet, see, what does it say before the chet? V'yu shnei marumim, they were both naked. V'lo yizbei shashan, they weren't embarrassed. Why? No sense of self. Which, of course, makes the whole Avera harder to understand, but we know that, right? We don't understand. So how could they possibly do what they did if, say that's not the issue. What happened? The whole notion of garments came into being. The ikar chet, the ultimate chet, who? Hergish ha'mu'urav b'tevara. The sensitivity that is mu'urav. What does mu'urav mean? Mixed. Mixed up. Meaning contains both, tev and ra. What did Adam and Chava experience before the chet? Tev, elokus. What were they able to experience after? Tev ra. Eitzadas tev ra. Right? Now, the Eibishter wanted all this to happen, obviously, because he wanted us to be the way we are so that we have real Aveda and Elam Hazah. That's not the issue here. The Rebbe is just explaining, he's not explaining the why of it all. He's explaining what happened. Right? So by virtue of doing what they did, they brought about a whole new reality. Uksi v'yedu ke'erumimem. They knew they were naked. Why? Shenischadish b'hem ha'hergish ha'ma'urav b'teiv v'ra. It was brought about anew in them. And again, yes, you have the question, well, how could they do the Aveira without that? Not our issue. Everybody's bothered by that, but that's not our issue. What happened was they now had a whole new experience of reality. And reality now included not only Elokus, but the opposite of Elokus. They were still from. They were still Adam and Chava. They were still unbelievably holy people. But they appreciated the fact that there's another state of reality that's possible. Not that they want it, they're not interested in it, but it's there. Shezeu gam keinin levushim. That's levushim. Hahergish ma'urav b'tevara. Ubeshorshay, what's that? Uhergish haseichel v'mides. A person's hergish, feeling, sensitivity to their own seichel and their own midos. How do you and I experience self? Seichel and midos, right? What we think and what we feel. That's me. Is that experience a bad experience? Not a bad experience. But is it an experience of self as opposed to an experience of Elokus? Yeah. Can I use that experience to connect to Elokus? Yeah, that's our challenge down here. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, but that it's so amazing what the Rebbe is saying. The simple pshat. Who am I? What I think and what I feel. That's who I am. That's my experience of myself. Right? And everything that happens is filtered through that experience. Right? Now, I don't have to be obsessed by it, so all I'm thinking about all day long is what I feel and what okay, Beseder, but it's all being filtered through there. Even if I'm doing an act that is, basically what you and I would understand as a selfless act, it's still ultimately filtering through my seichel and my midas. Right? Even if I'm overcoming my seichel and my midas by virtue of doing this, okay, it's still filtering. I'm making a decision to overcome my seichel and my midas to go do that. Okay, can't get away from it. I mean, you can if you're a Navi. That's them. How do they get rid of it? Lay on the floor and have no filters left. That's all. There's no, because if there's any sense of me, then I'm going to color what I hear from the Eibishter. Right? That's why, and you see it often, in the most extreme cases. People who have serious emotional issues, not like every one of us has, we have emotional colds now and then. Everybody has an emotional cold now and then. You don't go to a doctor for an emotional cold. You have a cold, I don't know, drink some fluids, rest a little more than usual, and you're going to go to a doctor. I have a cold. What are you doing here? Just go home. Whose money are you wasting? The government's or your own? Just go away. Right? Okay. A flu, even a regular flu, probably don't have to go to the doctor. There are flus that is probably you're going to go to a doctor. Okay, so you have an emotional flu, right? But emotional colds, we all have emotional colds now and then. Feel a little under the weather emotionally. Okay, it's not good because it's all just me. But okay, to say we're not perfect. Emotional flu. What if a person has a serious emotional flu? We have emotional issues. they'll hear ideas in Chassidus and they'll turn them into absolute idiocy. Right? They'll turn them into something so negative and so dangerous that it's unbelievable. Right? They'll hear Torah and they'll turn it into something unhealthy. Why? Because they're very, very unhealthy. So what they're hearing is coming through their kli and turning into something unhealthy. I remember when I was a bacher in yeshiva, so there was a guy and I'm not picking on Or Sameach, I just happened to be in Or Sameach, right? I mean, we all knew each other. There were 3 main yeshivas in those days, and everybody knew each other. Each had about 100 guys, right? So we used to play football together and gun soccer. There was Or Sameach against our yeshiva until they cheated. And then we stopped. No, they cheated. Russia cheated. They really did. They were much better than us, but they cheated us. They were much better. They didn't have to cheat to beat us. They were much better.
Bring it back.
What?
Bring back the football game.
Yeah, no, it was fun. You guys, it's a home game for you guys. So there was a guy in Or Sameach, and we all knew, like it hit the new, and everybody was freaked out. He wouldn't get out of bed on Shabbos because he might do an avail. So he stayed in bed all Shabbos long.
Is that not an avera in and of itself?
What?
Is that not an avera in and of itself? Or are you not meant to?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's being mevatel also, it's a mitzvah saseh. Yeah, no, but that's sick, right? That's a very, very unhealthy way to incorporate the information of there's all this stuff that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, right? Now, most of us can receive that information and somehow process it in a way that allows us to deal with Olam Hazeh in some sort of normal, everyday, healthy way, right? Okay. And if I tell you you're completely bottle and you don't exist and you're a nothing and you're an idiot, right? I mean, we just learned that, right? Did anybody all of a sudden fall on the floor? Oh, I'm an idiot, don't know. Yeah, no, we know what it means, and we can process that in a healthy way and understand it in a healthy context. What about the person who's not healthy at all I'm a nothing, I'm unimportant. People who hear the word bittul, who aren't healthy, immediately think I'm unimportant. Bittul is exactly the opposite. Right? Bittul is what allows you to connect to your absolute importance. What's your absolute importance? God needs you. But he doesn't need you hanging around with yourself, contemplating your own belly button all day long. He needs you to get it together and do all those things that he created you to do, to reveal him in Olam Hazeh. And without you, he can't do it, so to speak. He needs you so much, you know how important you are. But you'll never, ever touch that importance unless you're button. Right? That's true bittul. And the unhealthy person will say, bittul means I'm a nothing, and I'm unimportant, and I don't matter, and so I should just, either do a lot of drugs or jump off the building. I don't know, I'll pick something. Right?
Flip a coin.
Right? Flip a coin. Right. What's today's action? Right? Right. Well, because I can't stand living with myself, right? Because I'll try to, jumping off the building is pretty final, but drugs are like a good way of escaping my own unimportance, which is what most of the world is sort of doing, right? I mean, that's what they're doing all day long, right? Like, I don't matter. There's nothing I do, so I just, so I'll just escape into some state of fog for a while, and it's nice there.
It reminds me of a video game. There's this video game where it's kind of like a choose your own adventure. And you get to a point where they give you 2 options, and the options are shoot yourself or give up.
Wow.
No,
this is what I want my kids to play with. My kids will grow up healthy kids. They'll realize it's at the end. Kids, don't worry. These are the options: either shoot yourself or give up. So my father gave up. He's the drunk in the corner over there. That's my father over there. He's just the guy with the bottle on the floor spilling scotch, and he's good scotch. Because before he gave up, he made a lot of bucks. So after he gave up, he can drink good scotch. Right? Okay. What?
Get rich and then give up.
You might as well get rich first. I'm not saying, because then you have a better giving up. I mean, you might as well give up at some tropical resort as opposed to, give up in a 1-room apartment with no heat. I mean, who needs that? Okay, right. So It's so, this is so amazing. This is so amazing where it takes us. And what it helps us appreciate about our own lives and what reality is about and what we're about. It's amazing, right? Okay, so if I filter it, if it always gets filtered through me, so meaning it always does get filtered through me. I mean, that's why there'll be certain things that we won't understand as completely as we could, because we'll color it with our own yeshus, with our own sense of self, and I won't let ourselves understand it as powerfully as we could. I heard an amazing thing on Shabbos, is reminding of it. You'll understand why it reminded me. Someone asked Rav Mendel, Bezrat Hashem, you should all write a pan to the Rebbe tomorrow. That'll be explained tomorrow. But so the pan, we don't really write any information. We just write names of people. But when someone asked Rav Mendel, when I write the Rebbe, what should I write? So Mendel said the following. I heard this in the Farbrengen on Shabbos. I've never heard this story. It's an amazing story. Mendel said, Mendel was a very, very, very sophisticated and deep person. He said, there are things that you'll say to everybody and anybody. You'll say it to everybody. There are things that you'll only say to those people that you have a relationship with. Then there are things that you'll only say to the people that you're closest to. And then there might be things that you say only to the 2 or 3 people that you're extremely close to, or maybe the one person you're extremely close to, your spouse. Right? And then there are things that you'll only say to yourself. And then there are things that you're even afraid to say to yourself. All that can be said to the Rebbe. Wow. That is unbelievable. That's what Rav Mendel said. Those things you're afraid to say to yourself, you can write the Rebbe that. He knows that anyway, because he's the panemius of who you are. So, wow. It's just like, whoa. That's Mendel, right? That's what a chassid really is. It's like a huge fat thought. Right, okay, let's go back to our mind. We're finishing at 8:30 sharp today. Okay, like we always do. No, I do want to make I do want to stop earlier because so you guys can do whatever you want to do between now and davening, so that you daven the way you'd like to daven. It's my own experience, my own seichel, my own midas. V'lochen, yeah, that was what, the 8th, 10th line? V'lochen, be'eisa nevuah. So what would happen at the time of nevuah? Hayatzarech havshotas levushim. They'd throw off their garments. Shu'inyan havshotas hahergish to seichel midas. They'd throw off their own seichel, their own midas. So the message of Elokus would come into a clean, open kli. They weren't there. Again, Moshe Rabbeinu was so holy and so lofty and so buttal that consciously he could experience nevuah. He didn't have to move out of the side because there was no Moshe there in the first place, which is astounding. But that was Moshe. That was the only Navi who ever experienced nevuah that way. Avram Avinu had to go to sleep, right? Tardei Mai, a deep slumber overcame Avram Avinu. Bris Bein B'Sarim. Avram Avinu experienced this, right? Not Moshe Rabbeinu. V'hainu, liyes bebechinas bittul hakeichis v'chushim, a state of the nullification of his own powers and his own senses. Ukemavur b'Rambam. Let's just finish the Rambam and then we'll stop. Ukemavur b'Rambam. Now we have a little bit to do at the end of the Marmot. Tomorrow, I think, let's do a review tomorrow. I'm Farbrengen tonight. I don't know what's going to happen. You are probably also going to find the Farbrengen. It's Yud Shvat. If not, people sit around here and Farbrengen. Right? So tomorrow will be a review day. And Thursday, who knows what's going to happen to Thursday? Thursday will disappear into the ether. Right? Right, Thursday. No, because it'll be a late Farbrengen, so probably davening will be 10 o'clock or something Thursday. That's my guess. Although Rabbi Vicken doesn't usually Farbrengen that long, but I don't know who's going to Farbrengen. Who's Farbrengen Yud Shvat? I'm not sure. So I'm not sure, but it's a late Farbrengen generally. K'mavur b'Rambam b'Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. This is the Rambam, the 7th chapter of Sefer Hamada, right? I'm sorry, Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah in Sefer Hamada. Sefer Hamada is the first book in the Rambam, right? The first sets of halachas are Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, the laws of the foundation of Torah, and the first thing the Rambam talks about is the need to believe in God, etc., right? Okay. Miyesodei hadas leida. It is a foundation of the religion to know, the Rambam says in the 7th chapters. Chapters 7 through 10 are about Nevuah. Leida, to know. Shakel Yisbarach menabe b'nei Adam. Very interesting language. HaKadosh Baruch Hu causes Nevuah in people. Minabe. Right? Causative. He feel. Right? Because Nevuah has to come from above. I can prepare myself from below, which is what the Nevi'im do. And interestingly enough, what do? They listen to music and get themselves in a state of tremendous simcha, so they can go out of themselves. Right? Dafka simcha, not depression. Depression is pushing yourself into yourself. Right? Simcha is getting you out of yourself. That's why the person who's incredibly stingy with his money will spend a lot of money on his daughter's wedding because of the simcha involved. Right? He'll go out of himself. So they dafka would prepare with music, etc., to experience nevuah. When nevuah chala, and the nevuah falls on from above, right? Al chochem v'gibor. Al chochem has to be someone who understands things, right? Because after all, if he doesn't understand things, then he's not going to be able to translate the nevuah into information that you and I can gain from. V'gibor, he has to also be strong. What does that mean? He works out in the gym? No. Hamizgaber al yitzray, who overcomes his yetzer. Got to be a holy guy. Ve'ein yitzray mizgaber alav b'shum davar, and his yetzer doesn't overcome him in anything. He has to be holy. Ukemavur sham barucha, and that's explained there in the Rambam at great length. V'loche nikra b'china zu. What's the navi? Shtus, a level of shtus, a level beyond intellect, not below. That was shtus to klipa. This is shtus to kedusha, beyond intellect. And this is turning away beyond intellect and beyond comprehension. That even though I might not understand this intellectually, I understand that it's true. Right? It is what it is. I appreciate that it's true. Let's use that word instead of understand in order to distinguish between the two. It's real, it's true, it's what is. I don't understand it. Okay. And since the Aveda in the Mishkan and the Mikdash, is to transform darkness to light. The darkness itself, physicality, Yair, will illuminate. Physicality will become the kli for the revelation of Elokus. Even though physicality naturally hides Elokus. How do we transform that? Hainu demihashtus delumazer, from the shtus, from negative shtus, the concealment of physical reality. And what was ruach shtus? Hiding God. They'll arise from that shtus to kedusha. Take that which conceals God and turn it into a vehicle for the revelation of God. V'lochein, that physicality. This is what we spend our whole day dealing with. Lochein haya mishkan mi'atzei shitim dafka. Therefore, the Mishkan was from Atzei Shitim. We answered the question we asked at the beginning of the 3rd chapter. Why is it Atzei Shitim? You want to build a Mikdash? You have to get beyond your own intellect. You want to bring Mashiach? You have to get beyond your own intellect. Mashiach makes sense? I don't know. What are the whole world looking for? A fixing of the world that makes sense, al-pi, the way people look at the world. Any of it working? It doesn't seem to be working. Right? Communism, socialism, capitalism, the ecology, human rights, all makes sense, right? As Winston Churchill said, if someone's not a socialist when he's young, he has no heart. If he's still a socialist when he's older, he has no brain. Right? Okay. Right? Fine. Okay, so there's certain aspects of all of these things that will resonate in intellect or in emotion. Seder. but that's not fixing the world. What's going to fix the world? Something completely transcendent of intellect and emotion. It's called Mashiach. It's called God. It's called the transcendent level of godliness that'll be revealed in the world. You want to get into Mashiach, you're going to have to get L'mayla mitam v'das. You want to put Mashiach in a box where it all makes sense? It all makes sense, and in one moment the whole world is going to change, and one person is going to emerge as the king of the whole world, and everybody's going to accept that person, etc., etc. That all makes sense to you? I mean, okay, it makes sense within the context of the fact that you've learned a lot about it and you understand that there's such a thing. Okay, but like, how does that happen? Right? So if I'm stuck in my intellect, I might have a very, very hard time relating to that as an event that can really be in this moment. But if I can get L'mayla mitam v'das, so then what doesn't make sense is that it hasn't happened. Right? Not that it can, but why hasn't it? Right? Okay. Say them. The level that's beyond intellect, hamizbarer, that is right. There's a period here. Hamizbarer v'nasamina lamata minadas. That comes from the lamata minadas. And you take physicality, take the reality that we experience, take all those things that we filter through our own intellect and emotion, and reach a state. Use all of that for connecting to something beyond all of that. Of course. Let that all be a plea for the truth of Torah and mitzvahs. And then you bring Mashiach. Okay, we'll finish the Maimer next time. The Rebbe is going to take us to a very interesting place next time. Mashiach is the most known